Hi, I'm Peyton Luke, and welcome to a special episode of First Liberty Live. Today, we're going to talk about legacy giving and what it is and why it matters. So today, I am joined, and it is his debut, Dave Holmes, our very own CFO. Dave, welcome to First Liberty Live.
It's nice to be here, Peyton.
Yes, of course. So for some of the folks that don't get to see you, on camera very often, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you did before you came to First Liberty.
Well, that won't take very long. I'll try.
I don't know
not
about
to.
that. You have an impressive resume.
Well,
Yeah.
Thank you. I've had the privilege of being here as the Chief Operating Officer for 12 years and then ceded that in January. And I've remained the Chief Financial Officer. So I've been here a little over 12 years now. And the board has asked me to take on a new role, and that is as Chief Legacy Officer. A little bit about my background. I am a proud Texan, being born in San Antonio. My father was part of the greatest generation, fought in World War II, and my nickname was the Little General, so I was predestined to also go in the military, which I did. I'm a proud Longhorn and graduated from ROTC right at the tail end of the Vietnam War, and I wanted to fly. So I flew fighters in the Air Force, and then I got into other government work, and then I graduated from the Air Force, or actually retired from the Air Force, out of the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo, in Japan.
Wow.
Following that, I was lucky enough, the Lord opened a door for me in New York, and I got into the private investment banking business, first with J.P. Morgan and then a couple of other ones after that, and spent about 17 years on Wall Street. Then I had my own little firm for 4 or 5 years, then I came here, as I said, about a little over 12 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That's awesome. See, and you're the perfect one to talk about this topic today because you have that background and you really understand what you're saying when it comes to finances. And I know a lot of individuals, just like myself, when we're talking finances, I want to make sure our money is in a safe, secure place and that we're getting wise advice with this as well. So today, let's talk about what is legacy giving?
Yes, thanks for the opportunity. First, let me say we are very fortunate and blessed to have a very robust group of donors out there that have supported the cause of defending religious liberty in America. It's a very important cause, as you know, and our donors have been faithful over the years, and we really appreciate that. I like to bifurcate the whole giving question into two phases. There's what I would call here and now money, people that we know to keep the lights on, people that would give money to have programs like this and support current cases. But some of our cases are really long dated. As you know, Peyton, some of these cases have lasted 10, 12 years, and they go to the Supreme Court, and they're expensive. So as a CFO and a former banker, I don't like these kind of asset liability mismatches, where you have assets, donations that are short term because people give here and now money, but then the liability that we experience of still having to fund cases well into the future, way down the railroad track, in other words. And how do we make sure that we have funding then, 10, 12 years from now? So legacy giving is one way of trying to solve that dilemma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and why does this matter, not only for, First Liberty, but also why is it important for, some of our viewers that are considering giving now and into the future?
Sure. As I say, current contributions are enormously important. But if someone thinks that religious liberty discrimination, bias against the faithful, is going away anytime soon, I think you're not quite right. You're not reading the tea leaves as well, because we're close to the problem. And I think, I call it the 2050 problem, where the year 2050, we're still going to be experiencing, sadly, religious discrimination in this country. So for people who are listening to this program in our current donor base, if you want to establish a legacy for your heirs, your kids and your grandkids and perhaps great-grandkids, you want to make sure that environment out there in that year 2050, 2060 is still one that is free as much as possible of religious discrimination. And funding groups like First Liberty can really continue to help do that. Where we are today is so vastly different than where we were 25 years ago. And I suspect that 25 years hence, we're still going to be having similar problems. I'm sorry to say that, but I think that's the case. So we need to try to give people the opportunity to try to help combat the problem out into the future,
Sure.
as well as what we are experiencing now.
So how can people today and now be part of defending religious liberty, say in the year 2050 or even in the year 2075? Like,
Right.
I know that you have mentioned before there are ways that people can do that. So how can we do this for ourselves, but not just that, the future generations that will be here at that time?
Sure. In working with some of the nation's wealthiest families, as I have done over my time on Wall Street, there are many planning and structures that those families utilize to try to satisfy their philanthropic intent. Yes, in some cases, minimize and mitigate the effect of taxes, and also to satisfy the desires of their children to lead and grandchildren to lead really beneficial, fruitful lives. And so a lot of those trust vehicles, those structures that they utilize can also help our donors if they want to leave a legacy of religious liberty for people in the future. Using unused or unneeded insurance policies and naming First Liberty as a beneficiary, or establishing certain kinds of charitable trusts that could provide tax mitigation, current income, and the avoidance of capital gains tax. Those are also possible uses that families can use. So using insurance, using trusts, things like that. If you have assets and not just cash, if you think about the assets you own, those can be used to, in a leveraged way, to provide future funding that will provide that environment of religious liberty for your heirs.
Yeah. Okay, so I know before you and I talked about before we came on air that there's also the opportunity within someone's will even. And I know
Yes.
that's a tough topic. Many of us don't always like to think about that or talk
Right.
about it, but it is important for those that are here after us. How do wills connect with the work of legacy giving?
Yes. Well, as a Christian, we approach life and death questions differently. And there's a certain inevitability to life. And you're right, talking about death and taxes, that's not on everyone's hit parade. But it is inevitable that we have to face that. And so if you want to try to ensure that your heirs lead as comfortable a life as possible and get a good start in their own lives, and certainly within a context of religious liberty, one really easy way to do that is to write your favorite charity into a will. Some people will leave a dollar amount. Some people will leave a percentage of their residual estate after they satisfy all of their creditors and whatnot. And it's an easy thing to do. You really only have to have the name of the charity, and it'd be helpful to have the address. You don't even have to tell the charity that you're naming them in the will. And we have a number of donors and board members that actually do that, that will write First Liberty into their wills so that at the time of their passing, they will continue to fund the idea of religious liberty well into the future. We hope everyone has a long and fruitful life here, but it's an easy way to do that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because I was actually going to ask you, why do you think First Liberty would be a good place to invest, or even say name in a will? Why First Liberty over other charities?
Sure. Well, in the battlefield of religious liberty, fighting against bias, our track record, the Lord's had his hand up on us. I know, because we've had 9 Supreme Court case victories in the last 10 years. We've got another one headed up that way now, and those cases are expensive. We have a good track record. We think we know what we're doing. We use a leveraged model where we use these volunteer attorneys to help complement our own extraordinary legal team here. So our track record is really good. So I like to think of this as an invested donation, a return on invested capital. Being a Wall Street financier, that's what I think of. It's in financial terms, a dollar invested here is just about as good a place to invest as you can find in the religious liberty space.
And what are you, as the CFO and the chief of the legacy giving, what are you working to do to ensure that First Liberty will be here in the year 2050 or in the year 2075?
Sure. Well, I'll just throw out a few things that we're thinking about. There are a lot of bells and whistles that you have to go through in the legal and accounting area to make sure that things are tightened up and that they're certainly allowable. We're a very conservative organization when it comes to those things. But looking at longer dated assets, as I said, people have unneeded retirement assets, for instance, rolling over an IRA. That they don't really need those funds because they've been blessed in other ways in other areas. That's one thing we're thinking of. Talking about different kinds of endowments. They're not particularly enamored with an endowment per se, because there are rules around endowments that get institutions in hot water, and some recently, big universities. But there are other kinds of endowments, quasi-endowments, that could be more locally controlled, that we're looking into things like that. Using insurance. Insurance is a terrific way in the estate planning area for people to pay estate taxes if they happen to have that kind of liability. But using insurance and naming First Liberty as a beneficiary of an insurance policy that might not be needed, that's another thing that we're looking at. And as you said, trying to increase the number of people that write us into their wills. You've heard of challenge grants and matching grants. Why not use a will challenge or a will match? Thinking about that, if we could just get 200 or 300 people to write a portion of their residual estate and let us know. We don't have to know that, but it does help me think ahead as to what kind of future assets we might have on the books to meet these liabilities. Someone could write us in the will today. It's not a contract, and they could write us out tomorrow and not even have to tell us. So it's a very easy, burden-free way of trying to help in the fight in the future against religious discrimination.
Yeah, I think you made an important point that people don't even have to tell us per se that we're in the will, and they can change that moving forward as well. Right. What would you say to those that are maybe within our F3 group or a little bit younger? Maybe they don't have kids yet, or maybe they have very small kids, so the concept of looking at the wills and writing, a charity in might not be quite there yet. What are some things that the younger generations can do if they want to get behind the work of First Liberty and give for the Legacy Giving Project?
Sure. I think this is a pretty sophisticated generation. That they get a lot of unnecessary, unneeded hits from people, but it's a very smart generation too. And the number of young people that I've spoken to, especially if they're married, have small children, they're already beginning to think about what kind of insurance that they might need to make sure that their kids, are taken care of in case they run a stoplight, a red light. I had someone run a red light in front of me today. And you never know when those kind of things happen. So insurance can be a conversation, a necessary one for younger people. You don't have to wait until you're much older. There's certain kinds of insurance policies that are very, very cheap because you've got health and you've got time. And so younger people are already starting to think about things like term insurance. We're not in the insurance business. We don't sell insurance or anything like that. But it is a piece of advice I like to mention to young people because it isn't too early to start thinking about those things.
Well, Dave, thank you. This has all been great. Is there anything else that you would like to add or that you think would be valuable information for our audience?
Well, again, thank you very much for your current support. The fight's going to be on in that year 2050. There's no question about that, I think. So if you want to get behind First Liberty and its fight in those years well down the railroad track, so to speak, think about us and put us in your will. Peyton mentioned you don't have to tell us that you even did it. I wouldn't mind if you would send me, dholmes@firstliberty.org, a note that says, yes, I am writing you in. And if you don't mind, you might even say, I think it might be X dollars or X whatever. There's no obligation there, but it does allow me to kind of project forward and say, I think out in the year 2030, 2035, 2040, we might have this kind of balance on the asset balance sheet. So again, thank you for all of your support, and we would like to pray about that and hope that you'll also pray about it and think about future support as well as what you're doing now to support us currently.
Well, Dave Holmes, thank you. Always a pleasure and amazing hearing your insight and your experience. So thank you for sharing with us today.
Thanks, Peyton. Have a great day.
Thank you. If you would like to be part of the work of First Liberty in defending religious liberty, not just now, but also into the future, the year 2050 and beyond, you can do that and you can start today. You can go to firstliberty.org. You can look for the big red give button in the top right-hand corner. There'll be more information there to guide you, or as Dave said, you can email dholmes@firstliberty.org. First Liberty, fighting for what matters most.